Never trust your neighbors. I've lived in this condominium since I was 4 years old. My parents were happy at the time and very relieved to finally be able to leave our old, dilapidated house and move into this 10-story condominium. Despite also being old, according to my mom, its interior was much larger than our small house. We've lived on the 8th floor since then. Many of my school friends would ask if they could spend the weekend at my place. I always asked my mom about it because I was eager to play or watch cartoons with someone during my childhood, but the answer was always the same, a resounding no. This was something I would understand the reason for later. I always found this condominium boring, and during much of my childhood and early adolescence, incredibly, of all 10 floors, there was never any child I could play with or anyone my age to talk to. This was always frustrating for me since one of the perks of living in a condominium is to know or perhaps just coexist with other people in the same environment, right? Since we moved here, a middle-aged lady had always caught my attention. Every night, she would turn on the hallway light and leave it on, or when her 30-year-old daughter visited, she would repeatedly ask her to make sure to lock the door both when arriving and when leaving. Apparently, the young woman has a copy of the key. My parents never got along with her and always warned me to stay away from her and be careful. Bah! Pure nonsense, I thought at the beginning of my puberty when I became aware of things and had my first period. However, over time, her behavior started to deeply disturb me. In meetings with the building manager, according to my dad, she was always against installing a motion sensor light, one of the reasons they still don't exist in the narrow hallway near her apartment, and opposed any kind of innovation, like security cameras inside our condominium, which were non-existent up to that time. During the day, I never heard her. Her apartment was the quietest among all the others, except on Saturdays, when sometimes I swore I could hear screams and sounds of crying coming from her apartment. Over time, I began to suspect that she might suffer from some mental disorder like depression or, in the worst case, schizophrenia. My mom said she believed the woman was a widow. Recently, my parents separated, and I ended up in my mother's custody. My dad would go out to drink early in the day and return late at night, almost passed out drunk. And well, the events I'm about to share happened to me recently and left me even more shocked by this entire situation. It was a typical Saturday during the day, but everything began at night. My mom had already gone to bed, but I had a bout of night terrors. I woke up and looked at my phone. It was exactly 3 a.m. I couldn't remember why I had woken up in the middle of the night and was sweating that much. I rested my head on my pillow and looked at the corner of my room. I stared at it and froze. I could see a tall, pale figure approaching my bed. It seemed to be a man wearing oddly baggy clothes with a devilish grin on his face and wide, bulging eyes. I screamed loudly, closed my eyes, and could hear deep, continuous laughter coming from my room. It was him, or whatever that damned creature was in my room. I began repeating in my head that it wasn't real, but he wouldn't stop laughing until he did. The light in my room was on, and my mom stood at the door. She came to me, asked if everything was okay, and I told her everything that happened. She said it was fine and maybe it was just a bad dream and that we were safe on the 8th floor. She invited me to sleep on a mattress in her room. I tried to calm my mind, went to her room, and lay down on the mattress on the floor. "It's okay," that soothing voice echoed in my head all night. It didn't seem to be my mom's voice. It was a deep, masculine voice, and I could swear I was dreaming this time. The next morning, I woke up and couldn't see my mom in bed. It was early in the morning. I searched the entire apartment and couldn't find her. I looked for a note but didn't find one. Everything was too strange to be true. I left my apartment and noticed that the door to the old lady's apartment next door was wide open on a Sunday. Everything felt so strange that I questioned if I was really in a dream or if I was already awake. I walked down the hallway and approached her door. It seemed crazy, everything that was happening, but somehow I needed to know what was going on, and I thought that since there were no cameras in our condominium, it wouldn't hurt to see what all this meant. Something inside me urged me to enter her apartment, and in the end, I did. The place had an overwhelmingly foul smell. I went to the kitchen and saw a pile of unwashed dishes and glasses. The floor was filthy, and the carpet in the living room was bulging underneath and crawling with roaches. A feeling of disgust mixed with fear of what I might find made my stomach turn. I decided to stay away from the carpet and explored the rest of the living room. There was an old black and white TV with interference that I couldn't understand how it was still there. A VHS player was connected to the TV, and there was a collection of tapes, some with bizarre titles like Life Has No Meaning, Self-Mutilation, A Shamanic Invocation Ritual, and There Is No Happiness. I walked down the hallway to the last room. The other rooms were somehow locked, and ended up vomiting at what I saw. A stool was on the floor, strategically placed, and a rope was tied to a ceiling fan blade. The old woman had the rope around her neck, and her purple, lifeless body was suspended in the air as if it were mere decoration in the room. Her eyes were vacant, and her face bore an expression of deep melancholy. Roaches crawled out of her mouth and across her body, and on the bed there was a note scribbled on old paper. I regret what I did years ago. I know I shouldn't have done it. He warned me that when the right day came, on a Saturday, he would come here to take whatever was left of me. I waited 25 years of my life and always asked my daughter never to come here on a Saturday, and it was today that I found out. It was today that I saw he came. I could feel his presence from here. He said he wanted to make a sacrifice, and if I died before the day, he would have to take someone innocent. Forgive me. I could see dried tear stains on this part of the letter, making parts of the text illegible, which was already full of scribbles, by the way. I continued reading anyway. I couldn't avoid it. I preferred to die like this rather than be taken by him. Forgive me. I still couldn't believe what I had read. I quickly left the room, went to the living room, and approached the carpet. Even though I knew what I would see wouldn't be good, I lay down and looked under the carpet and saw my mother's pale face there. Her mouth was filled with her intestines, purposefully stuffed, as if a very sick person had killed her and placed her guts in her mouth. I didn't know whether to feel sad or disgusted. I cried uncontrollably while looking at her face. I stood up, my heart burning with pain and again feeling the urge to vomit. I looked at the door through which I had entered and saw it had been forced open. I was about to call the police when I suddenly remembered something that made me freeze with a deep fear, even more profound than when I saw the pale man in my room. My mind flashed back to the previous night when my mother said everything was okay. She seemed strange. Her eyes seemed to stare blankly at me, but I didn't care. When she led me to her room and pointed out the mattress on the floor, I was sleepy and had looked at the window, though it took me a while to remember, and it was open. The curtain was drawn aside, and the window was visibly unlocked, with the moon's reflection casting a play of lights. I lay down on the mattress, and my mother sat beside me, stroking my hair and saying again, "It's okay." How strange. Her voice sounded so deep and masculine when she repeated that in my ears.